National Catholic Register. This is Register Radio, bringing light and clarity to the news and topics that affect your life.
On this Memorial Day weekend, we remember all those who have given the ultimate sacrifice while in military service for our country. A special thanks is owed to the chaplains in our armed forces, and this week on Register Radio, we talked to Register reporter Joe Pronechen about the heroism of Catholic chaplains. And then, the Trump administration has launched a multi-part attack to free Title X family planning programs from the grip of the abortion industry, particularly the nation's largest abortion provider, Planned Parenthood. We get all the details from Peter Jesserer Smith, the Register staff writer. I'm Jeanette DeMelo, editor-in-chief of the National Catholic Register and co-host of Register Radio. I'm joined, as usual, by Matthew Bunson, the Register's senior editor and co-host of Register Radio. Hi, Matthew.
Great to be with you. My dad was 28 years in the Army Medical Service Corps and became a Catholic because of military chaplains.
Are you serious? Wow,
yes, I am.
Did not even know that. As we were prepping this show, we didn't even have that conversation. My dad was also in the military, not that long, but for many years. Of course, he can't say that is what brought him his Catholicism, but certainly as a Catholic man who appreciates those years of service that he did. You know, Joe is on the call with us as well. Joe, thanks for being with us.
Oh, you're welcome. Always happy to be on Register Radio with you, Jeanette.
So Joe Pronechen has always covered, it seems, our stories related to military chaplains, especially these that have received America's highest honor, which is the Medal of Honor. And Joe, your story this time is called Faith Under Fire, Remembering Heroic Catholic Chaplains Who Received the Medal of Honor. This ran in our last print edition, which came out just a few days ago. And, of course, this story will run on Memorial Day for everyone to see online. So, Joe, this story features 5 Catholic chaplains that have received the highest honor. 2 of them also have their causes for sainthood underway. So let's begin with those 2. Who were they?
Okay, the first is Father Vincent Capodanno, the Maryknoll priest who was a Navy chaplain and died in Vietnam. In fact, EWTN was involved in the production of a film concerning him this year, which just won a major Catholic award less than a month ago. So he's the first one. And then the second one is Father Emil Kapan. And he was an Army chaplain who died in a prisoner of war camp in Korea during the Korean War. And
so what's the title of the movie?
I think it's called The Grunt Padre because that's what the men would call him. They had that special moniker for him, nickname.
So who are the other 3 men who you spoke about in the story?
The other 3 are less known and yet just as brave. One was a Father Angela Lightke, and he won a Medal of Honor it was awarded in 1969, and again for what his actions were in Vietnam. He did not die in service as Father Capodanno and Father Kapan did. Another one was Father Charles Joseph Waters, again, Vietnam. He was an Army major chaplain there. And he died in the line of duty, in the line of fire, as he was tending to wounded men. And the third one was from World War II, the only Catholic chaplain in World War II to win a medal. And his story is phenomenal, and his name is Father Joseph O'Callaghan. And actually, he was the first Catholic chaplain to receive the Medal of Honor because of his actions. And he could have got it on several points, which is interesting. They didn't know which one to recommend the Medal of Honor for. He was just so incredibly heroic on a particular day.
Now that just brings me to the question of what are the criteria for receiving the Medal of Honor?
It's a service to your country, your fellow man, above and beyond the call of duty. In many of these cases, as we know in 3 of the chaplains' cases, they died while in the in the line of duty, and in the face of the worst odds, they gave their life tending to their fellow man. And in this case, they were doing it without weapons. The Medal of Honor winners with weapons at least had something to defend themselves, so to speak. But these chaplains went into the worst of battles, into the worst of situations, without any protection other than the Lord's mantle over, the Blessed Mother's mantle over them. That was it.
Yeah, and
knowing
Joe,
full well that there was no way they could protect themselves.
And Joe, I know in sort of common parlance, it's often called the Congressional Medal of Honor, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Well, this must have been one of those articles that was a pleasure to write, but it also must have been very moving for you.
Oh, it was. When you read their stories, and what they went through, and for instance, Father Capodanno, he, as he was tending the men over here, he was wounded several times. Part of his hand was blown away, and he still kept up until finally it took, literally they counted 27 bullets from a machine gun to stop him as he was tending a fallen medic just yards away from the enemy's machine gun nest, and yet, as I mentioned, one of the people, and I actually talked to this gentleman for Father Capodanno's history and article over here. He was the second to the last person that Father Capodanno tended to, and he said that he all his fright left when Father knelt over him and said, "Everything's all right. God's with us on the battlefield over here." And he says he just felt more peace than he ever felt in his life. And then Father Capodanno moved on to the next one, where obviously this soldier saw what happened to Father Capodanno, so he's an eyewitness to that.
So this is one of the more memorable conversations that you've talked about, and you've talked to other people about. So who are some of the other people who knew some of these chaplains or family members who kept their stories alive? Because this is almost the stuff of legend, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. If I could swing over to Father O'Callaghan, he had written a book after the World War II sightings, but he was very modest about that. But it was his Jesuits that wrote some great tributes to him over there, especially when he died. He died, was 1964. He was always sickly after his experiences in World War II, and he was extremely modest about doing that. But the commander of the ship, he was on the USS Franklin, and it was an aircraft carrier that was hit on March 19th, which we know is the Feast of St. Joseph, and ironically, Father O'Callaghan's first name is Joseph, so it's, obviously, I mentioned in the article, St. Joseph certainly had his eye on Father O'Callaghan that day, but he over 800 men died that day on the carrier, and because what had happened was it was early in the morning. A single Japanese bomber got through, dropped 2 bombs on the ship, and they just happened to hit in the quote right spot unquote. And caused a conflagration right away. Planes were lined up, fully armed and fully fueled, ready to take off on deck, and obviously they start blowing up one after the other. And Father O'Callaghan just waded into that, giving last rites, giving blessings. But beyond that, he was able to lead. He went down below decks, and one of the bombs actually fell below decks and started blowing up in the entire hangar area, again loaded with various bombs, rockets, small arms ammunition, fuel, and he was able to lead 700 men out himself, and he never even took any credit for that, to get them through a safe passage on deck anyway. And he almost chuckled about it after. He says the worst thing, he didn't fear death, but what he feared was small spaces, claustrophobia. He had terribly, and he was not a robust individual either, and he was 40 years old at this time, and one of the turrets had blown up on the front of the aircraft carrier, and the other one below the bridge was already so hot that they figured and smoking that the ammunition was going to blow that up. And the commander said after, if that blew up, it would have taken the whole bridge and and killed all the officers on the bridge, obviously, and the ship would sunk. And they credited Father O'Callahan for forming and leading a party, let it himself into there to get the ammunition out, this red-hot ammunition they had to pass with their hands somehow and toss over the side, jettison over the side. And the commander said, he says that he picked that one as the one to recommend Father O'Callahan for the Medal of Honor for, in spite of all the other things. He finally fell asleep after a couple of days. He stayed up while he was carrying corpses out, and burying them at sea.
It's just amazing, this incredible service that these men had. Now, you mentioned we don't have much time, Joe. We have maybe a minute left, and but really, you just told an incredible story. This is not one of the chaplains who are in line for possible sainthood. His cause has not been begun. So, what is it about the other two that have launched their causes? If you could say in brief.
The only thing I could figure out here is simply because they died in the line of duty, whereas he didn't, and they died while serving, while performing their priestly duties in the worst of circumstances over here, and so that's basically why I believe their causes. I could see Father O'Callahan being. Recommended for cause for canonization for all he did there. And he was supposedly a very quiet, mild-mannered man, went back to teach mathematics in Holy Cross College in Worcester, and then died in 1964. So that's probably the only reason why his cause hasn't been opened, is because of the timing of his death in relation to the Medal of Honor.
Absolutely. Well, Joe, it's a pleasure to talk to you. I'm glad that you follow these cases of these chaplains so frequently, and it's nice to continue to hear as these causes progress. And of course, we offer up thanks for those who have served our country in the military. When we come back, we will talk to Peter Jesserer Smith about the Title X and what that means for Planned Parenthood and the defense of life. This is Register Radio. More when we return.
Father Wade Menezes talks about the National Catholic Register.
As the National Catholic Register celebrates its 90th anniversary, I think that says a lot about the publication. It works. It's solidly Catholic. It presents the teachings of the Church unabashedly so, and also guides its readers to be even more solidly Catholic themselves. One of the major effects that I think the Register has on its readers is that it elevates the intellect. Whether it be a faith item or a news item, it presents the news and the faith item in a very balanced way. One thing that the Register can never be accused of is being too far left or too far right. It is solidly Catholic, right in line with the Chair of Peter, and I think that says a lot about the Register. For a 6-issue free trial of the National Catholic Register, go to ncregister.com and click on the 6 free issue banner, or call 800-421-3230 for your 6 free issues. And as you await your first issue, enjoy some of our online content.
Let's return to Register Radio on EWTN.
My administration has proposed a new rule to prohibit Title X funding from going to any clinic that performs abortions.
That was President Donald J. Trump at the Susan B. Anthony List dinner in Washington, D.C. on Tuesday night, May 22nd. And Matthew Bunson, Register co-host, was there.
I was. It was a memorable evening
of course.
For all kinds of different reasons.
Of course. So also, Peter Jesserer Smith did a story about this very topic, the Title X funding. And Peter joins us right now to talk about what Trump was even talking about. What is Title X and what's going to happen next? Peter?
Yes, so thank you so much, Jeanette. It's always a pleasure to be here on the radio with you and Matthew. But Title X is a statute for the federal government to fund family planning programs, generally for those people who are of low incomes. And it was enacted during the Nixon administration, I believe. And has been on the books since then. The big complication, however, has been that definitely since the Clinton administration, they use this as a slush fund to underwrite some of the other costs of operating their business. So the idea is that they have some kind of family planning program that they provide. And Title X says that you can't use any of this money to provide to pay for abortions, which that's all well and good, but because the Title X money can be used to fund things like advertising and
contraception,
salaries, contraception, it helps. Money's fungible, so the money that would have gone to that can be now used to support other areas of their business. And abortion is the profitable one.
And of course, I mean, when we're talking about this, what we're really saying, and what President Trump is really saying is, hello, Planned Parenthood. This money is no longer going to be coming to you because you provide the most abortions in this country, and you are receiving this fund, right?
Yes, they're the single largest provider of abortion in the country. Planned Parenthood accounts for 35% of all abortions in the United States, and they've done a fairly good job of becoming the largest abortion provider over the past few decades. They also claim to provide 41% to serve 41% of all Title X patients. Mm-hmm. And now there are some people that dispute those numbers, but what's significant here is you have to understand how this works with their business model. Abortion is paid out of pocket. It can't be paid for by Title X funds. And 75% of all those who obtain abortions have low incomes. So the idea is you establish relationships with this very abortion vulnerable demographic through the Title X program. And Title X pays for the family planning stuff. But when artificial contraception inevitably fails, the relationship is already established for Planned Parenthood to then come forward and say, well, here's our signature service for your unplanned pregnancy, and that is abortion, because that's what happens to most people who end up in a Planned Parenthood in a Planned Parenthood relationship. Their unplanned pregnancy ends up in abortion most of the time.
So, Peter, what do we expect to happen now? What what is Trump's actions? How will this roll out?
Well, I think if people have to understand that what the administration has actually done here over the past 5 months is they've set up an opportunity to change the equation and change the ground game as far as this area of family planning goes. See, what you have to understand is that this area has been dominated for a long time by Planned Parenthood and other abortion providers. So the idea is, so what they did, they've done this in several steps to get Planned Parenthood out of the game, but to invite pro-life organizations to fill in those gaps and to enter into this area. And there's a concern there that the second half of it, the pro-life groups getting involved and reshaping this conversation with absence education and natural methods of family planning, there's a concern there that they will not engage. And then we've lost this big culture-changing opportunity. So I can go over the steps that the administration made, and very quickly. The first thing that they did was they changed the grant process with a point system that favors absence education and natural family planning. So if you are a grantee that has these components, you can compete for more money. Mm-hmm. And the direct opportunity here is for pro-life groups to be sub-grantees. Most states have 1-2 main grantees, like a county health department, not a county health department, but a state health department, so that there's an opportunity there for pro-life organizations to say, I want to I can offer my services as a subgrantee and help you be more competitive for this grant. Okay. The direct grant issue is a little more complicated. We'll get into that later, but there's a new opportunity to apply for direct grants from Health and Human Services without having to go through a state. So that's also important. But they did this because that now puts Planned Parenthood in a less competitive position. Second thing they did was Trump signed into law the overturning that regulation that prohibited states from defunding Planned Parenthood or redirecting their Title $10 to entities other than abortion providers and Planned Parenthood. So he did that. This third step, which is the critical one, is he restored, for the most part, a Reagan-era rule that prohibited any kind of co-location. So basically says if you're an abortion provider, you can't have access to Title X funds. You can't refer for abortion. The only difference here with the Trump rule is you can still counsel about abortion, and that
the option exists, right?
Yes, you can counsel them, but that's actually pretty neutral because a pro-life group, for example, can counsel people about abortion and tell them the truth of what really happens and what's involved. And here are the actual other options that are out there other than abortion.
Well, Peter, I want to stop you because your article gets into the specifics of these grants and what some of the challenges will be. You've got the pro-life reactions. I think it's important that our listeners go to that article to kind of find out. This is pretty, some of it's complicated because it relates to policy in these grant processes. Your article is called Trump Moves to Axe Planned Parenthood from Title X Promote Pro-Life Alternatives. So that can be found at ncregister.com. But, you've said something that I find interesting. I think we have to answer this question before we move on to talking about Cecile Richards at Planned Parenthood. But,
certainly,
you said this is rolling back to a Reagan-era regulation, which is great. But this has kind of been a ping pong ball going kind of back and forth, if you will, changing with presidents. It's already been challenged, and it'll go through the legal system, of course. But can this just be changed by the next president?
That is definitely a possibility. I mean, this, for example, this rule was changed by President Clinton when he became president.
Right.
So. And same thing with the Mexico City policy. The one thing that didn't happen when President George W. Bush became president was he reinstated the Mexico City policy. He didn't reinstate this Reagan-era policy for domestic abortion providers. So yes, it is.
So it could be changed. So that's something
it could be changed.
We just need to keep in mind it didn't go through the legislative process. But we only have 3 minutes left, and I really want to talk about the article you did about Planned Parenthood because Cecile Richards, who's the head of Planned Parenthood, is retiring, and that's important news. Cecile Richards changed Planned Parenthood. She really, in the 12 years I think she was there, she really made an impact. What are some of the key impacts of Cecile Richards? And the next question after that is, where's it going? Where's it going next? So what's her impact?
Well, Cecile Richards has made Planned Parenthood such a huge powerhouse that the Democratic Party has become entirely beholden to it, which has been enormously frustrating for pro-life Democrats that really would like to get the agenda moved onto other things other than abortion.
Right.
Maybe things like family leave, more universal health care, whatever those agenda items are, they are taking a back seat to abortion. And the big difference you can see is that after the Democrats' losses in 2004 to George W. Bush, the Republicans gained complete control of government. They said, let's de-emphasize the issue of abortion. And they picked up seats in a majority in Congress. It was still a bipartisan pro-life majority in the House, but that's a problem for abortion providers, and that's a problem for Planned Parenthood. Cecile Richards saw Planned Parenthood and abortion losing influence in the Democratic Party, and she made sure that there would be no deviation from this at all. So we saw that in the Affordable Care Act debates, in which pro-life Democrats thought that they could get a statutory Hyde Amendment in, and they were picked off and defeated.
Yeah.
This is considerable.
She has made a considerable mark, and I really want our listeners to go to this story. I think it is worthwhile. I think Teresa Tomeo picked it up this week as well, and you were on her show. But it's called After Cecile Richards, What's in Store for Planned Parenthood? And it really chronicles the mark that she has made. I think it's important to note that Planned Parenthood is at a critical moment, because you've pointed out in this story, Peter, that their services, other services, the family planning services, are actually in decline. And things like the contraceptive mandate that offers a free contraception through your employment is putting all the other services partially in decline. But this has boosted Planned Parenthood's abortion services, meaning they are providing more abortions than they've ever been. And so now with this Title X funding, this shows you why that's so important and why it can really hurt and change the direction of Planned Parenthood. They have a decision to make. I think it was Representative Chris Smith in your article who said Planned Parenthood now has a decision to make. Will they focus in on family planning, or will they continue to be the biggest abortion provider? So we'll see what happens.
Yes.
But Peter, your stories on this have been very, very good stories, very instrumental for keeping our readers informed and the wider community. So thank you so much for covering this so closely, and keep watching, because we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much. It's a pleasure, and I really encourage readers to look at those articles and really think about how the pro-life movement can really make an opportunity here.
Very good. Remember, for more news, analysis, and commentary, check out the National Catholic Register at ncregister.com. You can look for Peter Jesserer Smith's stories on Cecile Richards and Title X. You can also look for our podcast at ncregister.com. Thanks for joining us on Register Radio here on EWTN. For Matthew Bunson and our producer, Jeff Burson, I'm Jeanette DeMelo. Until next week, God bless you.
For more information about the National Catholic Register and about Register Radio, go to ncregister.com. Podcasts of Register Radio are posted on ncregister.com and on EWTN.com. Join us next week at this time for Register Radio on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.